Alex, look at you in the sun. I'm so jealous. Hi. Hey, Ignacio. Hey, Tina. Hi, David. Hola, Lu. Guys, I put the Spotify playlist in the chat. So it should play alongside my voice. If you've got Spotify without the subscription, maybe hold off on the Spotify playlist. We had this in the week that the adverts kept popping up for one of our friends, and it was a bit distracting, but feel free to listen to your own music if not, or just to the sound of your own breath and my voice. So yeah, Spotify playlist should be in the chat. Just take a moment to grab everything you need. So I know it's quite warm for everyone, but make sure you've got some layers nearby. So we will be cooling down. So as we slow things down, the body temperature itself will cool down. So just make sure you've got something to hand, whether it's socks or just another layer, a blanket. Grab any cushions or blankets, something to cover the eyes at the end of the practice, and just make sure that you've got everything there. If you're outside, maybe some water as well. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to start the practice coming into child's pose. So we'll be in child's pose for a fair while. I'm just going to spotlight my other screen for you so you can see me. Can be here for quite a while, so this is like the equivalent of Shavasana or finishing posture, but at the start of the practice. So I would put something underneath the ankles, so a blanket, maybe a small cushion. And we're going to start with the knees together. And slowly start to walk the fingertips out in front so that you can bring the abdomen down onto the thighs, and have near you a block in case you wish to rest your forehead onto a block. If there's any pressure in the knees here, just lift the hips and place something at the backs of the knees. So you can always put another blanket just behind the backs of the knees if you want to take some pressure off of the knees. And then you can make a pillow with your hands and rest the head on top, or like I said, onto a block or directly onto the mat if that works for you. And there's an option here of either stretching the arms out in front of you if you want to engage in a shoulder stretch, or if you feel like really drawing the energy inwards and just slowing things down and engaging in more of a sense of surrender, then bring the arms behind you. So hands next to the feet, and rest back down. So just taking this as an opportunity to tune into how we're feeling. So something as subtle as that decision as to whether to stretch the arms out in front or place them back behind us already tells us something about how we're feeling today, and perhaps the way that we'd like to engage in the practice this afternoon. So it can be quite tricky to go from rushing around in our day-to-day, particularly on a beautiful day like this today, bank holiday weekend in the UK, and come straight into relaxation. So we're going to take a fair few minutes in child's pose to really settle in, using this as a way of landing here into the space where you're practicing. So the key in our practice is really to enable ourselves to slow down enough to the extent that we're present in the current moment. And able to sense and welcome our feelings, emotions, and thoughts just as they are. So whilst you're here, I'm going to take the opportunity to give you a brief introduction to the practice today. I know that many of you have done Yin before, whether with me or other teachers. So we're going to be holding postures for between 3 to 5 minutes as a general rule. And as we get towards the end of the practice, we will be extending those holds even further. So the idea in Yin is that we ease gently into the practice. Rather than trying to arrive straight into the end pose, we just give our bodies the time to really melt in. And although it may seem like perhaps an easier practice, some may say, if you just looked at the stills that we take from this workshop this afternoon, people might think, oh, how have you done that for 2 hours? But actually, the challenge is the stillness. So we generally give ourselves the first minute or so just to have a little shuffle around, a bit of a fidget. And then we try to settle and rest and stay. So with Yin, we're working with what is called the edge. And this edge is about finding the boundary between pain, which we never want to go into. If you feel any sharp pains, please do back out. And of course, there's limited guidance that I can give you here. I'll be giving actually limited one-to-one cues as opposed to a vinyasa flow class where I can give more feedback. I really want you to take this opportunity to feel into your body, and I'll be trusting you with that. So never feel any pain. At the same time, we want to feel an active stretch. So perhaps here, if you're starting to feel comfortable in child's pose, maybe you could take out some of the support from underneath you. Maybe you could play with taking the knees wider apart. Just see if you can find that balance between comfort and discomfort. So there's always this sense of a slight challenge, which we then melt into. So this afternoon's workshop, I will be guiding you with my voice. And for the first half of the practice, I will be speaking a bit more. So I'll be giving you a bit of a background into Yin Yoga, into the roots, into its relationship with Chinese philosophy, and in particular Taoism. Of course, feel free to just drown out my voice and focus on the quiet within. That's perfectly acceptable and absolutely lovely. If you ever feel like you want to just turn off the music or turn down the volume, that's of course absolutely fine. But know that the second half of the practice, I will be mainly leaving you in silence. So I'll be guiding you into each pose and then leaving you there. So coming back to the breath here, just noticing how you're breathing without trying to change anything. And see if you can start to slow down the breath. there are various ways to do this. You can count the breath, maybe breathing in for the count of 4, breathing out for the count of 4. You could maybe even breathe alongside your heartbeat. See if you can tune in to the extent that you can hear your heartbeat. You can use your heartbeat as the count, so taking 4 heartbeats on the in-breath and 4 heartbeats on the out-breath. And over the course of 3 or 4 breaths, so very, very slowly and intentionally, taking your time, moving with awareness, we're eventually going to meet on hands and knees. My teachers always says moving as slowly as the slowest part of you, so no rush, just taking your time. Maybe bringing the hands out in front of you if they're behind you, pressing into the palms. Starting to lift the hips and walking the knees back. So you've got one line underneath the hips down to the knees. Your wrists are stacked below your elbows and your elbows are beneath your shoulders. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes here, so really taking the opportunity to bring the gaze or drishti inwards. What we call in Sanskrit Untitled Drishti, inner gaze. And we're going to take some spinal movements, so moving really slowly here, maybe taking some cat-cows, lifting the head, dipping the belly. And then as you breathe out, taking the opposite movement, arching up. You can repeat that movement or maybe take some circles with the hips. Maybe it feels good to alternate between coming back towards a child's pose, seat towards the heels, and then bringing the weight forward, just really seeing what the body wants to do. Nice, everyone. See if you can link the movement with the breath. So we're not actually engaging in Ujjayi breath that some of you may know from our traditional yoga practice. We actually just want to keep the breath quite smooth and soft. And if at any time during the practice the breath becomes quite short and sharp, then it means that we've come a step too far, so we just need to back off. With that being said, if having the breath as an audible guide helps, then by all means feel free to turn up the volume slightly. Good, so from here, we're going to walk the hands back now towards the knees. Tuck the toes under. We're very slowly going to start to stretch the legs and come up into a soft standing position. So maybe moving anything away from your mat just for the moment. But keep your knees bent. So notice if you come into autopilot here and gone into a Uttanasana shape. We're just going to try and do things a bit differently here. So soften the knees as much as you need to allow the torso to rest onto the thighs. And we want to create as much support as we can here. So pressing the hands down into the earth, maybe taking a couple of blocks here and using the blocks to bridge the gap. But just allowing some kind of support, some kind of way that we're connecting down into the earth, even though we're in a standing position. And after this, you'll probably be glad to know there won't be any more standing positions. It's quite unusual in Yin, but there is just this one, which is called dangle for obvious reasons. So maybe starting to stretch one leg, stretch another leg, feeling the hamstrings as they expand. Just all we're doing here is working with gravity. Letting everything hang heavy. So if you can move the blocks down one level or bring the hands down now onto the mat, now that the hamstrings might have softened slightly, then feel free to do so. Just allow the neck to drop, chin coming in towards the chest. Soften the shoulders. Just notice whether you've got any tension in the feet. So just trying to relax the feet, no gripping. You can lift the toes out, up, spread them out, and then place them softly back down and just let them return to their natural position. And from here, we're all going to take a deep breath in through the nose. As you breathe out, just blubber the lips to really release some of the tension. Do that twice more, so breathing in fully. As you breathe out, blubber the lips, let go any residue of tension in the body. Last time on your own. And then from here, we're just going to, again, take some soft movements. So I know I said that Yin was all about stillness, but before we find that stillness, it's actually really nice for the body to feel movement. And it really helps the brain relax. So we're going to do whatever feels right here. So you can either stay in the forward fold and maybe just walk the hands from left to right, making a kind of swaying motion with the torso, just taking the arms from one side to another. If you feel like you've got quite a lot of excess energy, you can slowly start to roll up the spine, rolling the shoulders back once you're at the top. And from here, if you need to release that energy, we're really just going to do whatever feels good for you for 1 minute. So I was going to play music, but I wasn't technical enough. So my technician is in Romania currently. So you can do whatever feels good for you. So potentially a bit of a dance. I know that feels quite odd in a Yin practice, but it is really very good to get rid of all of this energy, to allow the energy then to drop. So if dancing feels like a bit of an extreme step, which potentially it is, we're just going to start with a bit of shaking. So shaking the wrists, maybe shaking the legs. You can lift one leg, shake it out, lift the other leg. Really go for it, no one's watching you. Nice, Alex has got loads of energy. That's always. So just really letting it go, let your inhibitions go, and just do what you need to do. So you can maybe sway the hips, releasing any tension, nice Vina. Drop the neck, roll the neck around. Really nice, guys. So just taking whatever movement you feel like, maybe Swaying the arms left and right, releasing any tension in the spine. Just letting ourselves be easy. Yeah, good, Ignacio. Nice, and then just for 10 seconds, just give everything we've got. So just get rid of everything. Really, really let it go. You can breathe out through your mouth, rub the lips again. Do whatever you need to do. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Amazing. Okay, really nice. So really slowly start to bring it back. So maybe just swaying from side to side, gradually coming back into stillness over the course of a breath or two. Coming back to the center, and we're just going to place one hand on the heart and one hand on the abdomen, on the belly. Close the eyes, and maybe now it's easier to feel the heart. Physically feeling the heart pumping the blood around the body. Something it does for us automatically, whether we like it or not. And really, it's an incredible thing. It's very rare that we take the opportunity to appreciate that. So just for a couple of moments, tune into your body and just be grateful for everything that it's doing by its own accord, allowing us to be here and practicing together. Starting to slow the breath again. Breathing fully into the abdomen. And breathing out. Good. And then from here, taking your time, you're going to come back down to a seated position. So sitting on the shins. Again, if you need that blanket underneath your ankles, that might be quite nice. I'm going to do that. I'm on a wooden floor. And we're going to take a pranayama exercise that I practiced with Bina this week for the full moon. It's a really nice cooling pranayama exercise. So some of you may relate it to Nadi Shodhana, and it's similar. In Nadi Shodhana, we're equalizing Ida and Pingala nadis, to the left and the right. Whereas in this pranayama, which is Chandra, moon, Vedana pranayama, we're actually just channeling our left nostril, which is our yin side, our lunar energy. So cooling, slow, soft, and feminine. So coming into our first mudra, which is Vishnu mudra. So lowering the index finger and the middle finger into the palm of the hand. And that leaves your thumb and your ring finger and your baby finger free. And I'll take you through it first, but we're going to place the thumb over the right nostril. And we'll be breathing in through the left nostril, and then closing using our ring finger and breathing out through the right nostril. And then we close straight away and we breathe in again through the left nostril. Switch and breathe out through the right nostril. So all we're doing is breathing in through the left and out through the right. So really working on bringing the warm air through the left and the cool air out through the right. So we'll start together and I'll take you through the first couple and then I'll leave you to practice on your own. So if you haven't already done so, you can close down the eyes and cover the right nostril. With the left palm, you can just let it relax on your left thigh. And we'll start by breathing in through the left nostril, taking a slight pause at the top, closing the left nostril, and then breathing out through the right. Close your right nostril with your thumb. Breathe in through the left. Close and pause. And then breathe out through the right. Breathing in through the left. Breathing out through the right. Just keep going in your own time, and I'll let you know when we're just on the last 3. So bring your full attention, full awareness to this pranayama. Try and relax the shoulders. We'll take 3 more rounds, finishing with breathing out through the right nostril, and then bring both hands down onto your lap, just while we wait for everyone to finish. Nice, everyone. Okay, so from here we're going to come into slightly odd pose, so just bear with me. It's not a long hold, so it's not the most comfortable. We're going to do a front ankle stretch. So just bring your hands down beside your hips. Keep your knees where they are, so knees together. And all we're going to do is lift the knees, so we're leaning back into the ankles. So you can keep your hands down. If you want to bring them behind you, it takes some of the pressure off, fingertips facing away. If you feel like you want to intensify the stretch even more, you can bring your hands onto your knees. And actually, in this posture, we want to round the back. So draw the navel in and really round through the back. Drop the neck, release the gaze down towards the belly button, and feel the stretch down the fronts of the feet. So if you're not on a blanket, this might be quite intense. We're only going to be here for 1 minute. And whilst you're there, as a bit of a distraction, I'll give you a very brief introduction into Yin Yoga. So Yin Yoga is quite talked about these days, but it's actually a relatively new branch of yoga. Obviously, we know that yoga has roots thousands and thousands and thousands of years back. And Yin Yoga, of course, is based in those roots essentially, but it was only named as such in the late 90s in America. So in terms of yoga philosophy, this is quite a new practice. And it draws inspiration, as I mentioned earlier, from Chinese philosophy as well as Indian philosophy, and in particular the Taoist concept of yin and yang, which we've heard a lot about, yin being, as I mentioned before, the soft, the dark, the quiet, the stillness, and yang being the more active, bright, light, energetic. And in Chinese philosophy, everything is classified into yin or yang. But it's important to remember that each thing within itself has a mixture of both. So within one object or one element, there may be a prevailing yin or prevailing yang, but there's always a little bit of the opposite within it, which is represented in the symbol of the yin and the yang, where you see the black and the white, and then in the opposite side of the circle is a tiny little dot, which represents the fact that there's yin and yang in everything to varying degrees. Okay, so releasing that and just doing what you need to do here. So maybe tucking the toes under, just giving the soles of the feet now a bit of a stretch out. You can come back onto your heels. Well done, guys. That's not a particularly nice one to start with. Good. Okay, and from here we're going to come into saddle pose. So again, if your knees are a bit creaky, then do bring something underneath the backs of the knees. And I would definitely recommend placing a blanket underneath your feet here, the tops of your feet, and bringing something behind you. So we're going to come down into saddle pose, but this is quite a strong back bend, and we obviously haven't warmed up the back at all, which is how it works in Yin Yoga. It's actually ideal to work when we're cold, as opposed to a more dynamic practice where we try and build up heat in the body. In Yin, we actually want to stay quite cool, and in that way we get really deep into the tissues and what we call our fascia. So grabbing a block or something that you can come down onto, placing that behind you, and normally we would take the flesh out of our calves and then sit back down and sit between the heels. But actually I'm going to give an option today which is a stronger back bend. So if at any point this is too much, or you already know, no, I've got problems with my lower back, this is going to be too much, come down onto your tummy into just a regular cobra or a sphinx. So that's going to be doing the same thing if it feels too much. If not, we're going to keep the knees together and slowly start to come down onto the back, but we're going to do this in stages. So starting just with the hands behind you, fingertips facing forward, pressing the chest open. Just seeing how that feels if you actively press the chest open. We're almost forcing a bit of a back bend here, but it's just preparation to come further down. So see how that feels. And only if that feels okay and there's no tweaking in the back at all, you can lower down onto the elbows, maybe bringing the hands to cover the soles of the feet. And again, just stay here for at least 3 breaths. There'll be plenty of time to come down into the main pose, so really no rush here whatsoever. And injuries tend to arise when we come into or come out of a pose too quickly. It's very rare for them to actually happen whilst we're in a pose. So really taking your time here, especially as it's warm, we might be feeling over flexible. So take your time. And then once you've finished that course of 3 or 4 breaths, you might then experiment in coming further down, so resting the back of the head or the shoulders onto whatever it was you placed underneath you. Maybe bringing the arms out into a T shape. And just notice here whether the knees have started to lift. So if the knees are lifting, then that's a sign that this is probably the place to stay, or maybe even ease out. If the knees are down and you feel quite relaxed here, you may not need the support underneath your shoulders, but it probably would be quite nice to have something under the head, otherwise it's a strain on the neck. So just see how you're feeling. Again, no rush. If you can, Alex, try to bring your knees together. That's it. It will increase the back bend though, so just see how you feel. Good, David. Yeah, really nice, Bina. So again, for the first minute or so, we'll be here for 4 minutes in total. Feel free to make any adjustments. Working out whether there's anything that you need to support you. Whether you need to come out slightly, or whether you could perhaps go in a bit deeper. If you'd like to increase the intensity, you could raise the arms up above the head, opening up through the armpits. Nice. Taking hold of opposite elbows or stretching the arms away from you. So David, if that's quite strong, I'd recommend just coming down onto your stomach, coming into a Sphinx pose. Or just take your time, absolutely, in a seated position. There's no rush whatsoever. That's it. So try to stay supported wherever you are. So if you are in a forward, if you are on your front, then bring your forearms down. And if you have got something to rest your head on, a block or a cushion, then that's great. Just so that you can allow your body to melt into the practice. Nice. Really good, everyone. Okay, so whichever back bend you're in, just slowly allowing the body to open up. And when we're talking about yin versus yang, back bends are very much a yang part of the yin practice. So that's just to give you an idea that this is a yin pose, that this is a yang on the side of the yang spectrum. So where did the yin and the yang come from? That's something that actually links to science and the Big Bang. So when the Big Bang occurred, we know in Indian philosophy, this is the time when the sound of Om was created. And according to Chinese philosophy, this is when everything was divided into these two fields of yin and yang. And Taoism is a philosophy that has its roots in China. It dates back to the 4th century BC and is most heavily influenced by the Tao Te Ching, or the Tao Te Ching, which some of you may have heard of, and the philosopher Lao Tzu. So the Tao, or the Tao, means way. And the Taoists discovered a way of living which was in balance and in harmony with the rest of the universe, with nature. So for the Taoists, the way of life is to live alongside nature, not separate from nature. And they looked at the various rhythms within the universe. And they noticed that the more they disconnected from these rhythms, so whether they be the seasons or the day and the night, or even the cycles within our bodies, so as females, our moon cycle, or cycles of life, birth and death. And they realized that the more that they acted in accordance with these cycles that are naturally present in the universe, the more they harmonized with them, the better and the healthier and the happier that they were. So wherever you are, we're going to ease out of this. So trying not to twist. Just gradually reversing the stages that you came down in. So coming back onto your elbows and then tucking the chin under, slowly walking up, back onto your shins. Taking as long as you need to do that, and just spend a few moments just in an upright position, letting the spine neutralize, and then you can take a counter posture, so maybe coming into child's pose, but again going quite slowly. That was a really deep back bend, so just taking your time, maybe even just bringing the hands down and leaning into the hands. Letting the head drop. And then if that feels okay, then there may be some tweaking in the lower back. Hopefully no pain. If that feels okay, you can slowly start to bring your torso down onto your thighs and fold into a child's pose. But listening to your body here, if stillness feels good, then stay there. Lifting the head, bringing the torso back upright. I'm going to take the feet out from underneath us and stretch the legs out in front. So sitting on a cushion or a blanket just to enable that tilt in the hip so that we're comfortable here. And we're going to come into caterpillar, which is the forward fold. So there's a lot of the forward folding, back bending, forward folding, back bending. So like I said, keep listening to your body. And if you feel like you need more time between the poses, please do respect that. At the same time, like I said at the start, we move very slowly in yin. So whereas maybe in a dynamic pose, we might come straight to Paschimottanasana and reach for the feet. In this version, we're going to move over the course of a few breaths. So taking the hands beside the thighs, and then just slowly starting to walk the hands forward. So the general guideline, I suppose, would be to try to keep the chest open as we come down. So we're not rounding too much through the back, just to get to where we need to be. But once you're in a place where you can feel quite an intense stretch down the backs of the legs, and you feel like that might be your edge, that's when you can really start to just release. So it can be quite nice to bring the palms to face up, bring the forearms down, the backs of the forearms down onto the mat, and then just lower the chin to the chest and let the head work with gravity here, drawing the torso down naturally. And you'll notice that without any pulling or forcing, that with gravity, the work just does it for you. So it might take slightly longer, but at the same time you'll be going much deeper. So just seeing here whether you can surrender to the body. Try to release any tension. So the tension is there generally to protect us, but because we're moving slowly, there shouldn't be any need for holding on. So just see if you can let the feet be soft. They can maybe even slightly drop out to the sides. Let the thighs be soft. And just let everything go here. Perhaps including any sense of striving or trying to get anywhere, which the Taoists would strongly disagree with. They say that we should let things be as they are, so avoiding our constant interference with the natural way of things, the Wu way they call it. So seeing if you can just let yourself be heavy here. And be here for 2 more minutes. Noticing any levels of resistance here. Recognizing that sometimes we need to meet that resistance. Other times we don't. Practice is about leaning into the edges of both comfort and discomfort. Finding that happy medium, which is actually the essence of the Tao or the Tao. And taking 3 more breaths here. And when you finish your 3 breaths, slowly unwinding. Bringing the torso upright, and again trying to keep that gaze inward. You're going to bring the knees in, feet onto the floor, hands behind you, and just take some windscreen wiper motions with the knees, so taking the knees from left to right, just releasing the lower back, no rush to get there. Great, and then when you're ready, we are going to come into a lunge position. So we will start in tabletop. Again, the position from the start of the practice, stacking the hips, stacking the wrists, the elbows and the shoulders. And before we come into the lunge, just going to stretch the right leg back behind you. Just take some pulsing motions into the right heel. Just opening up through the back of the leg. And when you're ready, we'll step that right foot to the outside of the right hand. So the hands are still shoulder width apart. And to intensify the stretch at any point, so I probably recommend for most of you doing this, you're going to walk the left knee back so it's behind the hip. If at any point this feels too intense, just walk the left knee back. So that's just a bit of a guide as we go into this practice. So I'd say most of you can walk the left foot back and untuck the back toes. So we're in a low lunge, dragon, and there are a few options we can take here. So the first option is staying where we are, and the torso or the right armpit is just resting on the right thigh. And this is really quite a strong stretch, especially into the left hip flexor. But if you feel like you'd like to come a bit deeper, firstly, if you've got a bolster, I don't know if any of you have got a bolster, but if you've got a bolster or something, it's actually really nice to place that in front of the left thigh. It's a bit of a support for the left thigh. Again, if you need some support under your left knee, definitely pad it up because we're going to be here for a fair while. We've got 2 variations here. It's about 6 minutes in total. So don't make it too painful on the knee or painful at all on the knee. So remembering the options. So we can stay here with both palms down, or we can bring that right hand to the inside of the right foot. You might need to walk your right foot out slightly. And again, you can stay here. Or as the hips start to open up, you might be able to start to bend the knee, bend the elbows back, maybe coming down onto a block. You could actually bend your elbows and place your head into the palms of your hands. And for this first minute, as always, just do whatever you need. So if you've got something here that you can use to make this a bit easier to sink into, then please do. The body likes support and it will release when it's supported. Just think of the example of the baby being swaddled up in lots and lots of layers, and it's soothing to feel that support. So taking whatever you need, and then once you've found your edge, releasing into that edge, seeing if you can be with it just as it is. So we'll be here for 2 minutes. And we're coming into, or towards the end of the first half of the practice. So remembering that the second half of the practice, there'll be lots more opportunities for stillness. I haven't shared with you nearly half as much as I wanted to, but never mind, there'll be more workshops. I'll send you the notes via email. But something that's quite important that I did want to explain, I suppose, are the meridians. So in traditional yoga, we talk about nadis, and in Yin Yoga, it's a very similar concept, but working with what are called meridians. So if you have been for acupuncture, you might be familiar with this concept. So whereas in traditional yoga, we talk about prana or energy, in Yin, we talk about chi, which is spelled Qi. And this chi circulates through 12 major meridians, energy pathways. And each one of these meridians has a correlating organ. They're pairs. So there's one yin and one yang with each meridian. There's actually 2 meridians, which are the principal ones, a bit like Ida and Pingala in traditional yoga. And they stand alone. And the 10 other meridians have a pair of organs each. So before I go into a little bit more detail, we're going to come into a variation here. So this is called winged dragon, again for quite obvious reasons. So all we're going to do is keeping everything as it is. If you are framing your right foot, however, you might want to bring your right hand to the inside of your right foot if you haven't done so already. And then we're just going to drop the right, I don't know if you can see, drop the right knee out to the right. So it literally is like a wing. That's it, Alex, yeah. Good, David. And then replace your hands back down. And again, we'll be here for 3 minutes. So moving slowly, taking the first few moments just to relax into the pose. Maybe bending the elbows back. Maybe coming down onto your forearms. Bowing the head. Just noticing that tendency to grasp or try to achieve, and see whether we can move differently here. Remembering you can adjust the back knee in if you need more support. Observing the edge of discomfort here. And lean into it gently. Using your breath, listening to your breath. What's the breath telling you? If you need to back out, please do. And then bringing that right knee back in. Can be quite nice sometimes just to stretch that front leg. So coming into a bit of a hamstring stretch feels quite nice, I find, after a lunge, but just do what you need to do. It's not technically yin, but if you would really like to, you could step back into a soft downward facing dog, but not for long. Just do what you need to do. Nice. Well done, everyone. And I'm going to come into the other side. So coming back onto your hands and knees. Establishing that base, that connection with the earth. And first, remembering we're just going to stretch that left leg back behind us. Should feel quite nice. Rocking into the heel, pulsating forwards and back. Slowly opening up into the eye of the knee. And when you're ready, bringing your left foot to the outside of your left hand. Again, keeping the knee where it is if on the other side it was quite intense, or you can tuck the back toes and walk that right knee back and then release the top of the foot down onto the mat. Taking whatever variation you did on the other side, so if you had a bolster or something in front of your right thigh to lean into, do the same here. Perhaps resting the elbows onto a block. Moving a cushion, this time underneath your right knee. And learning from the other side, but at the same time, not judging or not expecting it to be the same. It's very rare for us to be identical or symmetrical on both sides. So we can learn, but just be aware, as if this is the first time you've ever come into any kind of pose before. So again, you could rest the head and the hands. You could gradually come down lower to the earth. And again, we're here for 3 minutes, and this is my final opportunity to talk, and then I'm going to leave you alone. So just to round off what we've been talking about. So 10 of the 12 meridians are linked to our physical organs within the body. And these organs are grouped into pairs, like I said. One is yin and one is yang. And then this is then linked to the 5 elements. So it's similar to what you may be familiar with, 5 elements, but 2 are different. So we've got water is the first element, which relates to the kidney and the bladder, for obvious reasons. Then we've got wood, which links to the liver and the gallbladder. In the middle we have fire, again another obvious link to the heart and the small intestine. And then earth, which linked to the spleen and the stomach. And finally metal, which relates to the lung and the large intestine. And when we're working within the yin practice, what we're trying to do is balance these meridians, allowing the chi or the prana or the energy to flow freely through the body. And sometimes we notice there are blockages within these pathways, and sometimes specifically in the yin practice we'll work on opening up a specific pathway, maybe relating to a season or a particular organ pair. In this practice we're just doing a bit of a general overview. So again, coming into the variation, Walking the hands back to the inside of the left foot, and we're coming into winged dragon, so taking the left knee out to the side, and see if you can release the hips down. Let the neck hang heavy. You can press into the hands as much as you need to, so if you need some more support, really use the palms to support you. If you can come on onto the forearms or come down onto a block, that's great. If you need to let out any tension, feel free to take a sigh through the mouth, or again you can blubber the lips like you did at the start. Just one more minute here, so trying to find stillness wherever you are. So whether that means you need to back out or move deeper into the pose, make your choice and commit to it for one more minute. Good, and then bringing the knee back to centre. Bring that front foot and maybe start to walk the hands back towards the hips, stretching the front leg, just coming into that counter pose. You can rock forward and back a few times. And then again, stepping back to tabletop. And I'm going to give you a choice here. You can either come back to child's pose for a couple of breaths. You could come into a short and soft downward dog, like I mentioned before, or just sit on your heels and come back to that mudra we took at the start, placing one palm on top of the other, closing the eyes and just taking a moment to check in and observe how you're feeling. Before we come into the quieter part of the practice, really ask yourself whether there's anything you could possibly do to give you more comfort in this moment. And when you're ready, from wherever you are, we'll slide forward onto our tummies, come down onto the abdomen. So if you've still got that blanket or cushion, it might be nice to put that underneath the hips if you've got bony hips. You might want to bring a cushion with you to place underneath the head. Bring the arms out into a T shape here. So full surrender, releasing the forehead down, releasing the hips. You can take the feet slightly out to the side, they don't need to be together necessarily. Just see whether you can feel that energy, whether it's called the breath or whether we call it prana or chi. Just notice whether you can feel some kind of pulsation within your body, unique to you. For the next few moments, really concentrate on zooming in, bringing the attention to your own energy within the body. The mind is still busy, just keep bringing the attention back to the inhale and the exhale. And every exhale, just seeing whether you can soften even more. And again, moving so slowly. Eventually we will come onto our forearms, coming into a Sphinx pose. So if Sphinx is already quite intense, feel free to come down even more into Cobra with the arms alongside the chest. If not, we're bringing the forearms down, fingertips facing forward, drawing the shoulders away from the ears. And again, as we begin, making sure we keep the heart open. Then over the course of the next few breaths, we start to soften. So bringing your support, whether it's a block or a cushion, and allowing the head to rest on something. So this is, we are dipping the head here. I know we've spoken about this before. There's the worry of the dropping of the head. So if you feel uncomfortable doing that, you can, of course, keep your head upright. It's just not quite so relaxing. But do what you need to do here. There are no rules. The only rule, actually, is just listening to your body. So whatever feels good. Letting the hips release and be heavy nicely. See if you can release the feet. And if this feels like it's where you would like to stay, by all means stay. If not, for the next couple of minutes, we might want to look at increasing the back bend. I know there's some very back bendy people here. So taking the arms out to, or hands out to mat width, I'm going to slowly start to press into the hands, maybe extending the arms, and then again releasing the neck. You can walk the hands back as much as you need to get that back bend, but keep the pelvis down. And again, noticing the tendencies we have of achieving and wanting to go deeper. Remembering that it's not about that. No form of yoga is about that. And actually, maybe if we have the propensity to strive and push, maybe our practice is to do the opposite. And let ourselves release and soften rather than going deeper and further. So wherever you are, 2 minutes here. Even Lou's cat is still. Try to soften the shoulders, everyone. Good luck. Just one more minute here. Good, and then unwinding. If you're in seal, slowly bringing one forearm down at a time. Pausing between the movements so we're not going from one extreme to the other. And eventually we'll all come back down onto our bellies, making a pillow with the hands, so interlacing the fingers, resting the forehead on top of the palms, and just shake the hips out from left to right, left to right. Now bringing the hands along beside the chest. Now push into the hands, bring the torso up, bring the hips up, bringing the hips so that they're over the knees. You might need to walk your knees back a bit. on the mat. Give yourself space. We're coming into puppy pose. So walking the hands forward, trying to keep the hips up and above the knees. We're just working with drawing the armpits open, chest open, bringing the chin down or the forehead down, maybe the chest down. If you'd like to make this more restorative, you could always bring a bolster underneath your chest or a pillow. Again, maybe bringing a block underneath the forehead. The main thing here is opening the heart. Embodying expansiveness. Whilst at the same time, drawing the gaze and the attention inwards. That's constant, it's that constant play of opposites. One of my favourite meditation teachers, Muji, some of you may know him, I was lucky enough actually to do an online workshop, live meditation with him, along with about 3,000 other people from around the world. It was incredible. He says, quoting him, "Don't fight with the mind. Just focus on your natural sense of being, and immediately the mind begins to quieten down. This is a simple and easy way to discover and remain as the heart." So one more minute here in stillness. And with as little effort as possible, come back into child's pose. So bringing the hips back towards the heels, and this time everyone draw your arms down alongside the body, palms facing up, fingertips pointing back behind you. Coming back to where we started. And this is essentially the Taoist belief that everything is full circle. So whether it's the seasons, the elements like the water, which feeds the trees, the wood. We burn the wood, it turns to fire. The ashes of the fire turn to the earth. And then after many, many, many years, the earth turns to metal. Taking as much time as you need to, we'll meet on our backs with the knees bent, soles of the feet down onto the floor. So take your time, no rush. Gently, quietly coming down onto the back. If you've got, we're still a way away from the final relaxation, but we are going to be on our backs now. So bring anything near you that you need to for later, just to avoid excess movements later on. So if you want to put on some socks, or if you need to grab anything for later on in the practice to keep you warm, something to cover your eyes is really, really nice, especially as it's so bright outside. Just get everything ready so that you don't need to move too much later on. Okay, so that said, it's also good if you can have something to put underneath your pelvis here. So we're coming into a supported bridge. A block is a good option, but I would try and cover the block with something because it can cause a bit of stress on the bones. It's quite hard. My one is especially. Bolster's ideal, or even just a blanket. Just fold up a blanket a few times, or a couple of cushions. And we're just going to lift up the hips and whatever you've chosen. So I'm going to put a block just on the lowest setting underneath the pelvis. So not underneath the lower back. We want to keep that arch of the lower back. So it should be on the flat part of your back, the sacrum. And in whatever way, just trying to lift the hips somehow. It's up to you how high you take it, but remembering this is a yin practice, so we want to be somewhere where we feel we can release. We're coming towards the last quarter of the practice, and in this last section we actually actively back away from the edge, so we're in a more restorative state. We'll be holding the poses slightly longer, finding more stillness, and there will be less tension in the body, less of an active stretch in the body. So maybe your mind is craving a stretch, but you will receive that. It's just in a slightly different way. So you could consider walking the feet away from you and extending the legs if you'd like to increase the back bend. Maybe just give it a try. See how that feels. Going slowly. Not holding any tension in the muscles. You can let the legs and the feet roll out slightly. Keep scanning through the body, seeing where there's any way you can let go of tension. Your jaw, your forehead. Let the belly be soft. And make a commitment to yourself to stay here, both with body and mind. 2 more minutes. If your legs are stretched out, bring your heels back towards your bum and just pause there for a few breaths. And pressing into the hands, lift the hips and remove whatever is below the pelvis. Keep the knees bent and just replace the hips back down. So trying to come back into where we just were, but without the support under the spine. And walking the feet mat width apart. You're going to knock the knees together, coming into constructive rest. If you practiced with me before, you'll know that that's my favourite name ever for a pose, how rest can be constructive. And it is in so many ways. You can bring the hands onto the abdomen and take this opportunity to tune back into the breath. Noticing maybe whether the breath has slowed down. David, if it's comfortable, bring the knees together and the feet out wide. Feet out wide, mat width, feet apart, and knees together. That's it, perfect. Yeah. observing the breath. I'm going to read you the passage from the Tao Te Ching, which was my inspiration for this first workshop. It's actually from book 2 of the Tao Te Ching, again by the master Lao Tzu. So he says, step beyond yourself, step beyond the whole world, step beyond all existence. And when you penetrate that far, you will shine with the original brightness. You will realize that you are alone in this vast universe and that all the things are nothing but you. You will slough off past and present and will enter the place where there is neither being nor non-being. The Master remains peaceful in the midst of continual change. There is nothing that can disturb her, nothing that she finds unacceptable. She welcomes all beings, watches as they come and go, and stays rooted in what is real. So from here we're going to take that windscreen wiper action with the knees, moving slowly, taking the knees over to one side and then bringing them back to the center, keeping their feet out wide. Take your arms out wide and bring the knees back to the center as you breathe in. As you breathe out, take the knees over to the left. Again, working with the breath, breathing in, knees back to the center. Breathing out, knees over to the right. One more time, breathing in, back to the center. Breathing out, knees come over to the left. Inhale, knees back to the center. As you exhale, for the final time, we'll take the knees over to the right. And you can place your right outer ankle onto your left knee and turn the gaze over the left shoulder. The arms can stay out wide, or you could bring the arms into a cactus position. Maybe bringing the arms above the head, taking opposite elbows, or stretching the arms out long. If the knee is lifted from the floor, I would place something underneath it so that it can relax into something that will allow it to release. And then you can, maybe after a minute or so, release the support and see whether it is potentially dropping closer to the floor. If the shoulders are lifting, place a blanket underneath the shoulders. place that support under the knee, maybe noticing whether you can release the support and sink deeper into the pose. One more minute of stillness here. Slowly coming back to the center, unhooking that ankle from the knee. Bring the knees back to the center. Again, just re-establish the constructive rest position, so knees in, feet out wide. And then taking the knees over to the opposite side. When you're ready, dropping the knees to the left. Turning the gaze over the right shoulder. You can take the option of hooking the ankle over the knee to increase the stretch, and just pad your knee, so try not to let the knee hang in space. David, if you've got a cushion, you could place the cushion underneath your knee. Yeah, perfect. Stretching the arms out wide and gazing over the opposite shoulder, or taking the arms above the head. Your choice. If you'd like to deepen the stretch, remove any support, or just stay where you are. One more minute here. Very slowly bringing the knees back to the center. You can unhook your ankle from your knee. Finding something to cover yourself with, so a blanket or t-shirt or something, even if you're warm. It's good to feel that support and try to find something to cover your eyes if you can. Taking something below the knees ideally, so a blanket or a pillow or a couple of cushions. You could maybe bring something under the back of the head and then roll down onto your back. Bring the legs out wide, arms out wide. Feeling the whole body supported by the earth beneath us. Equally for all of us, no matter where we are, who we are. We're supported right now by that same force. And taking a few moments to really bed in where you are. Just momentarily thinking about how we can tune in collectively and offer out the energy of this practice for the health and the well-being of all beings. And then allowing any thoughts or emotions to drop away and just resting here, exactly as you are. Start to become aware of your breath. And the breath breathing the body. See if you can connect to your heartbeat like we did at the start of the practice. Breathing in for the count of 4 heartbeats. And breathing out for 4 heartbeats. Breathing in for 4. Breathing out for 4. Absolute presence with your body here. And just ask yourself how you're feeling. Taking a deep breath in and maybe sigh this time out through the mouth. And again, taking a full deep breath in. Sigh out through the mouth. Bringing the palms together and just rubbing the palms of the hands together, creating some heat which may already be there. Rubbing the hands, and then press the palms over the eyes. Feel the heat. Imagine that you can absorb all of that energy in through the eyes. And let it diffuse through the body. And then bring your hands in prayer, bringing your thumbs to the third eye, the space between the eyebrows. It's a sign of respect and gratitude to all those teachers that have come towards us, and to everyone, every being, everything that has enabled us to practice today. Thank you all so much. I'm going to leave you where you are, so no need to get up. I'm going to turn off the Zoom for you, as I always do in Yin. So just take your time, no need to rush, and I'll see you all very soon. Namaste, everyone.